Black young adult's unseen act of kindness goes viral. The supermarket erupted in chaos. Shouts echoed through the aisles as customers pulled out their phones, recording the confrontation. In the center of it all stood Marcus, a young black man in his 20s, his hands raised defensively while a security guard approached with his hand on his holster. "I didn't do anything," Marcus insisted, his voice trembling despite his efforts to remain calm. "Please, just check the security cameras." An elderly white woman stood nearby, confused and frightened, clutching her purse protectively to her chest while tears streamed down her wrinkled face. The store manager stepped between them, her expression stern as she pointed an accusing finger at Marcus. "We have a witness who saw you reaching into her bag," the manager declared loudly, causing more phones to aim in their direction. "The police are on their way." Marcus closed his eyes, a look of defeat washing over his face as he realized what was happening. His scholarship, his future, his mother's sacrifices, everything flashed before him in that moment. The crowd grew larger, their murmurs building like a gathering storm. Someone in the back shouted something about another one of these incidents, and Marcus felt his stomach drop. Then, through the sea of faces and camera phones, he spotted someone unexpected, someone who could change everything. But let's go back to how this all started. It was just 3 hours earlier when Marcus Johnson woke to the sound of his alarm clock, another ordinary Tuesday in September. Marcus stretched and silenced the persistent beeping of his alarm clock. The red digital numbers read 6:30 a.m., early but necessary. At 22, he was already balancing more responsibilities than most people his age. His small apartment was modest but meticulously neat, a trait his mother had instilled in him since childhood. "Early bird gets the worm," he murmured to himself, echoing his mother's favorite saying as he pulled on his running shoes. The morning ritual was sacred, a 3-mile run before his classes at the community college where he was studying business administration. The streets were quiet as Marcus jogged through his neighborhood. The familiar houses with their manicured lawns reminded him of how far he'd come. Growing up in public housing across town, he dreamed of stability, of creating a life his mother could be proud of. Each stride brought him closer to that goal. After his run, Marcus showered quickly and dressed in a blue button-down shirt and khaki pants, his work uniform for his part-time job at the library. He had 3 hours of shelving books before his afternoon classes, then his evening shift as a delivery driver for Angelo's Italian restaurant. The schedule was grueling but necessary to cover tuition that his partial scholarship didn't. "Morning, Mrs. Abernathy," Marcus called out to his elderly neighbor as he stepped into the hallway of his apartment building. The woman in her 70s with silver hair and kind eyes smiled warmly. "Good morning, Marcus. Off to change the world already?" "One book at a time," he replied with a grin, helping her with a heavy grocery bag. "How's Mr. Abernathy's back doing?" "Better, thanks to that heating pad you recommended. You're a good boy, Marcus. Reminds me of my Ronald when he was your age, always helping folks." Marcus nodded appreciatively. The Abernathys had been like surrogate grandparents since he'd moved into the building 2 years ago. Their generation had lived through the civil rights movement. Mr. Abernathy had even marched with Dr. King in '63, something he spoke about with reverence and pride. After helping Mrs. Abernathy to her door, Marcus headed to the bus stop. His ancient Honda Civic was in the shop again, another expense he could barely afford but couldn't avoid. The 7:15 bus would get him to the library just in time for his shift. While Marcus was starting his day, across town in a comfortable suburban home, Eleanor Wilkins was having a difficult morning. At 68, the retired elementary school teacher was struggling with the early stages of dementia, though she fought hard to maintain her independence. "Richard, have you seen my glasses?" Eleanor called out, rummaging through drawers in the kitchen. Her brother-in-law, Richard Wilkins, appeared in the doorway. At 72, Richard had moved in 6 months ago after his brother Harold, Eleanor's husband of 40 years, had passed away from a heart attack. The arrangement was meant to be temporary, but Eleanor's condition had deteriorated faster than anyone expected. "They're on your head, Ellie," Richard said gently, pointing to the reading glasses perched atop her silver curls. Eleanor touched her head and laughed softly, embarrassed. "Oh, silly me, I'd lose my head if it wasn't attached." Richard smiled, but his eyes revealed concern. He'd promised Harold he would look after Eleanor, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. His own health wasn't perfect, arthritis made mornings painful, and his doctor had been concerned about his blood pressure at his last checkup. "What's on the agenda today?" Richard asked, pouring himself a cup of coffee. Eleanor consulted a calendar hanging on the refrigerator, meticulously marked with appointments and reminders. Tuesday, I need to go to the supermarket. We're almost out of everything. She tapped her finger on a note she'd written. And it's double coupon day. Richard nodded. Alina had always been frugal, a child of parents who had lived through the Great Depression. Old habits died hard. Would you like me to drive you? No, Alina insisted. I'm perfectly capable of driving myself to Martin's supermarket. Been going there for 30 years. Besides, you have your doctor's appointment this afternoon. Richard hesitated. Alina's driving had become erratic lately, but taking away her car keys seemed like a cruelty he wasn't ready to inflict. All right, but call me when you get there and when you're heading home. You worry too much, Alina said, patting his arm. Harold was the same way. The mention of his brother sent a pang through Richard's chest. 6 months and the grief still felt fresh. He watched as Alina gathered her purse, checking to make sure she had her wallet, keys, and the envelope of coupons she'd been collecting all week. I'll be back before you know it, she promised, heading for the door. Richard sighed as he heard her car start in the driveway. He should have insisted on driving her. These days, Alina's good moments were becoming fewer and further between. Just last week, she got lost driving home from the beauty parlor she'd been visiting for decades. A kind stranger had helped her find her way, but Richard knew they couldn't keep relying on the kindness of strangers. At the library, Marcus moved efficiently through the rows of shelves, returning books to their proper places. The repetitive task was almost meditative, allowing his mind to wander to his classes and assignments. He was particularly proud of his business ethics paper that had received an A last week. Professor Whitman had even suggested he consider applying to a 4-year university next fall. The transfer scholarships are competitive, she'd told him, but with your grades and work ethic, you stand a good chance. The thought both excited and terrified Marcus. A bachelor's degree would open doors his mother had never dreamed possible, but the financial burden seemed insurmountable. His mother had worked 2 jobs most of his life to keep food on the table. Now, with her rheumatoid arthritis worsening, she relied on him for support more than she would admit. Marcus, could you help at the reference desk for a bit? Mrs. Chen, the head librarian, called out. Doris called in sick, and we've got a school group coming in. Of course, Marcus replied, shelving the last book in his cart. He enjoyed working with the children who visited the library, especially helping them discover books that might spark a lifelong love of reading. Soon, a group of 3rd graders filed in, led by a harried-looking teacher. Marcus greeted them with enthusiasm, engaging even the most reluctant readers by making a game of finding books about dinosaurs, space, and other topics that fascinated 8-year-olds. You're a natural with kids, Mrs. Chen commented after the group left. Ever thought about teaching? Marcus smiled. My mom always said I should. She wanted to be a teacher herself but never got the chance. It's not too late for her to take some classes, Mrs. Chen suggested. Marcus nodded, though he knew the reality. His mother's health and their financial situation made such dreams impractical. Maybe someday, he said. When his shift ended at 11:30, Marcus hurried to catch the bus to campus for his 12:15 microeconomics class. As he waited at the stop, his phone buzzed with a text from his mother. Pharmacy called. Insurance won't cover full prescription. Need to pay $87 difference. Can you help? Marcus sighed, mentally calculating his budget. He'd been saving for a textbook he needed for his accounting class. It would have to wait. Of course, Mom. I'll drop it off after my evening shift, he texted back. His mother's response was immediate. You're a blessing, son. Love you. The message warmed his heart despite the financial setback. His mother had sacrificed everything for him. He could do no less for her. After his economics class and a quick lunch from the vending machine, Marcus attended his management class, where they discussed leadership styles and organizational behavior. His professor used examples from the corporate world of the 1980s, the rise of companies like Microsoft and Apple, and how their founders' different approaches shaped their success. Marcus took detailed notes. Unlike some of his classmates who seemed to be going through the motions, he understood the value of education. His mother had drilled it into him. Knowledge is the one thing they can never take away from you. As class ended, his phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from his banking app. Alert. Account balance below $100. His evening shift at Angelo's wouldn't pay until Friday. The textbook would definitely have to wait, and he'd need to be careful with every dollar until then. He checked his watch, 3:30 p.m. He had a 2-hour break before his delivery shift started at 6:00. Just enough time to go to the pharmacy for his mother's medication and maybe catch up on some reading. As Marcus headed for the bus stop, he realized he needed to pick up a few essentials himself. His apartment was out of nearly everything except ramen noodles. Martin's supermarket was on the way to the pharmacy. He could make a quick stop. Across town, Alina Wilkins pushed her shopping cart through the aisles of Martin's supermarket, her brow furrowed in concentration as she consulted her shopping list. The store had been renovated the previous year, and the new layout still confused her. Items weren't where she expected them to be. "Excuse me," she asked a young employee stocking shelves. "Where do you keep the cream of wheat? It used to be in this aisle." "Breakfast foods are in aisle 7 now, ma'am," the employee replied with a patient smile. "7, but this is aisle." Alina looked up at the sign, squinting. "4, when did you move everything around?" "About 8 months ago," the employee said. "Can I help you find anything else?" Alina shook her head, embarrassed by her confusion. "No, thank you, I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. As she navigated the unfamiliar layout, her frustration grew. She'd been shopping at Martin's for decades, but today it felt like a foreign country. She checked her list again: bread, milk, eggs, coffee, cream of wheat, toilet paper, dish soap, chicken for dinner. By the time she reached the checkout, Alina's cart contained bread, milk, eggs, and coffee, less than half her list. She'd forgotten the rest, distracted by the effort of finding her way around the store. As the cashier rang up her items, Alina reached into her purse for her wallet. It wasn't there. Panic rose in her chest as she searched more frantically, emptying the contents of her purse onto the counter: keys, tissues, lipstick, reading glasses, coupons, but no wallet. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" the cashier asked, a young woman with a name tag that read Tina. "I can't find my wallet," Alina admitted, her voice quavering. "I know I had it when I left home. I always keep it right here." She pointed to an inner pocket of her purse. "Maybe you left it in the car," Tina suggested kindly. "Would you like me to hold your items while you check?" Alina nodded gratefully. "Yes, please, I'm sure it's just in the car." But it wasn't in the car. Alina searched under the seats, in the glove compartment, even in the trunk, growing more distressed by the minute. Had she dropped it somewhere in the store, or worse, had it been stolen? The thought made her stomach clench with anxiety. She returned to the checkout, her hands trembling. "I can't find it anywhere. I don't understand. I never take it out except to pay." Tina looked sympathetic but uncomfortable. "Would you like me to call the manager? Maybe someone turned it into lost and found." "Yes, please," Alina said, fighting back tears. She felt foolish and vulnerable. Harold would have known what to do, or Richard, she should call Richard. But then he'd know she couldn't manage a simple shopping trip on her own. Sandra Pearson, the store manager, arrived at the checkout. In her mid-40s, with an efficient manner and a streak of gray in her dark hair, she had worked her way up from cashier over 20 years at Martin's. "Ma'am, I understand you've lost your wallet," Sandra asked. Alina nodded miserably. "I must have dropped it somewhere, or maybe I forgot it at home." The possibility that she might have left the house without her wallet was almost worse than thinking it had been stolen. It would confirm what she feared most, that her mind was slipping away. "Let's check lost and found," Sandra suggested, leading Alina to the customer service desk, but no wallet had been turned in. "Can someone drive you home to look for it?" Sandra asked. "My brother-in-law, but he's at a doctor's appointment. I don't want to bother him." Alina's voice broke. "I don't understand how this happened." Sandra faced a dilemma. Company policy was clear about unpaid merchandise, but the elderly woman was clearly distressed. "Let's hold your groceries until tomorrow. If you find your wallet, you can come back and pay then." "But I needed the chicken for dinner tonight," Alina said, then immediately felt childish for complaining. "I understand," Sandra replied, her tone professional but kind. "Unfortunately, without payment." It was at that moment that Marcus Johnson entered Martin's supermarket, his own shopping list short: bread, peanut butter, milk, and if he could afford it, some fresh fruit. The bus had dropped him off right outside, and he planned to be quick, 15 minutes in and out. As he grabbed a basket instead of a cart, a habit to limit his purchases to what he could afford, Marcus noticed the scene at the customer service desk. An elderly white woman, clearly upset, speaking with who appeared to be the manager. He didn't intend to eavesdrop, but as he passed by to reach the bread aisle, he couldn't help overhearing. "I've been shopping here for 30 years, the elderly woman was saying, her voice trembling with emotion. "Harold, my husband, and I moved to Oakwood in 1992, and we've never shopped anywhere else." "I understand, Mrs. Wilkins," the manager replied, "and I wish I could help, but without payment." Marcus hesitated. The woman, Mrs. Wilkins, reminded him of Mrs. Abernathy, or perhaps his grandmother who had passed away when he was 15. She had the same vulnerable dignity, the same embarrassed confusion. Before he could reconsider, Marcus approached the counter. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I couldn't help overhearing. Is everything all right?" Sandra Pearson turned to him with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Everything's fine, sir, just a customer service matter." But Alina Wilkins looked at Marcus with relief as though he might have the answer to her problem. "I've lost my wallet," she explained. "Or forgotten it, I can't remember which." Marcus nodded sympathetically. "That's happened to me before, it's awful." "The young man is busy, Mrs. Wilkins," Sandra interjected. "Let's not keep him." "How much are your groceries?" Marcus asked, ignoring the manager's hint. Alina blinked in surprise. "Oh, I couldn't possibly." "It was about $40, I think." Marcus hesitated only briefly. $40 would leave him with almost nothing until payday, and his mother's prescription still needed to be covered. But the distress on the elderly woman's face made the decision for him. "I'd like to pay for Mrs. Wilkins' groceries," he said to the manager. Both women stared at him in shock. "That's very generous," Sandra said slowly, "but unnecessary. We can hold her items, please," Marcus insisted. "My grandmother always said what goes around comes around. I'd want someone to help my mother if she were in this situation." Alina's eyes filled with tears. "Young man, that's the kindest offer, but I couldn't accept. It's too much." "It's not too much," Marcus assured her with a warm smile. "And maybe next time you shop here you can pay it forward to someone else who needs help." After a moment's hesitation, Alina nodded. "If you're certain, I promise I'll pay you back." "I can get your name and address." "No need," Marcus said. "Just knowing I helped is enough." Sandra Pearson watched the exchange with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. In her 20 years at Martin's, she'd seen all kinds of scams, but something about the young man's sincerity gave her pause. "If you're sure," she said finally, "we'll need to ring up Mrs. Wilkins' items again at Register 3. As they walked to the checkout, Alina introduced herself properly. "I'm Alina Wilkins. I taught 3rd grade at Oakwood Elementary for 35 years before I retired." "Marcus Johnson," he replied. "I'm studying business administration at the community college. My mother always wanted to be a teacher, but she ended up working in healthcare instead." "A noble profession as well," Alina said warmly. "What year are you in school?" "2nd year," Marcus explained as they reached the register. "Hoping to transfer to State University next fall if I can get a scholarship." While the cashier scanned Alina's items, they chatted about Marcus's studies and Alina's teaching career. For a moment, her earlier distress seemed forgotten, replaced by the simple pleasure of conversation. When the total came to $43.87, Marcus pulled out his debit card, mentally calculating what he had left. It would be tight, very tight, but he'd manage somehow. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "Always be a blessing to others, even when it's not convenient." After paying, Marcus helped Alina load her groceries into her cart. "Can I help you to your car?" he offered. "That would be wonderful," Alina accepted. "My arthritis makes carrying bags difficult." As they walked to the parking lot, Alina shared stories about her teaching days in the 1970s and 80s. "We didn't have computers in the classroom then, can you imagine? Just blackboards and chalk. The children today wouldn't know what to do without their screens." Marcus laughed. "My elementary school still had blackboards when I was a kid. I loved the sound of the chalk." They reached Alina's blue sedan, and Marcus loaded the groceries into the trunk. "Will you be all right driving home?" he asked, noticing her slight unsteadiness. "Oh yes," Alina assured him. "It's not far, and Richard, my brother-in-law, will be home soon to help with dinner." Marcus nodded, though concern lingered. "Drive safely, Mrs. Wilkins." "Thank you again, young man," Alina said, her eyes moist. "You've restored my faith in humanity today." With a final wave, Marcus headed back into the store. He still needed his own groceries, though he'd have to be even more careful now. The bread and milk were essentials. The peanut butter he could probably manage. Fresh fruit would have to wait. As he shopped quickly, Marcus didn't notice Sandra Pearson watching him from the end of aisle 6, her expression thoughtful. Nor did he see another customer, a middle-aged woman named Diane Fletcher, who had witnessed his interaction with Alina and was now following him discreetly, her phone in hand. Marcus selected the store brand bread and milk, the cheapest peanut butter, and after checking the price, decided he could afford a small bunch of bananas. His mother had always insisted he eat fruit, no matter how tight money was. "Health is wealth," she'd say. As he headed for the checkout, Marcus suddenly remembered he needed toothpaste. He'd used the last of his tube that morning. Turning back toward the health and beauty aisle, he nearly collided with Diane Fletcher, who quickly lowered her phone. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely, stepping aside. Diane mumbled something unintelligible and hurried away, leaving Marcus puzzled by her behavior but too preoccupied with his budget to give it much thought. In the health and beauty aisle, Marcus compared prices on toothpaste, selecting the cheapest option that wasn't on sale. As he turned to leave, he noticed an elderly man struggling to reach a box of denture cleaner on a high shelf. Without hesitation, Marcus stepped forward. "Let me help you with that, sir." The man, stooped with age and leaning on a cane, looked relieved. Thank you, son. They always put the things old folks need on the top shelves. Not very considerate. Marcus smiled as he handed him the box. No problem at all. Anything else you need while I'm here? No, that's it. Much obliged. The man shuffled away, and Marcus continued to the checkout. What Marcus didn't know was that Diane Fletcher had been recording his interaction with Alina earlier. A self-proclaimed social media influencer with a modest following, Diane specialized in everyday heroes content. She'd been in the right place at the right time, capturing Marcus's act of kindness when he offered to pay for Alina's groceries. Now, as Marcus paid for his reduced groceries at the self-checkout, Diane was in her car in the parking lot, uploading the video to her social media accounts with the caption, "Young black man pays for elderly woman's groceries when she forgets her wallet. Faith in humanity restored." Kindness matters, pay it forward. The video began with Marcus approaching Alina and the store manager, caught their conversation about paying for her groceries, and ended with Marcus helping her to her car. Diane had edited out any parts where they exchanged names or personal details, focusing only on the act of kindness itself. Within minutes, the video had dozens of likes and shares. Within an hour, hundreds. Diane's phone buzzed constantly with notifications as the video began to gain traction across multiple platforms. Meanwhile, Marcus left the store with his small bag of groceries, unaware that his simple act of kindness was spreading across the internet. He checked his watch, 4:45 p.m. He still had time to get to the pharmacy for his mother's medication before his shift at Angelo's. At the pharmacy, Marcus handed over most of his remaining money for his mother's prescription. The pharmacist, Mr. Patel, had known the Johnson family for years and often held medications for them when money was tight near the end of the month. "How is your mother doing?" Mr. Patel asked as he processed the payment. "Better on some days than others," Marcus replied honestly. "The new medication seems to help with the pain, but it makes her tired." Mr. Patel nodded sympathetically. "Rheumatoid arthritis is difficult to manage. Tell her I said hello and to call me if she has any questions about the dosage." "I will. Thanks, Mr. Patel." With the prescription secured, Marcus caught the bus to his mother's small apartment on the other side of town. He had just enough time to deliver the medication and check on her before heading to his evening job. Across town, Alina Wilkins arrived home, where Richard was waiting anxiously. "I was about to call the police," he said as he helped her bring in the groceries. "You've been gone for hours." "I'm sorry," Alina replied, setting her purse on the kitchen counter. "I had a bit of trouble at the store." As she put away the groceries, Alina recounted her experience, the missing wallet, her distress, and the kind young man who had paid for her purchases. "He just offered to help a complete stranger," she marveled. "You don't see that kind of kindness much anymore." Richard listened with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "That was generous of him, but Ellie, this is exactly why I worry about you going out alone. What if this young man hadn't been there? What if you'd gotten lost again?" Alina's expression fell. "I know I'm becoming a burden." "That's not what I meant," Richard backpedaled, though it was partly true. Caring for Alina was becoming increasingly difficult. "I just want you to be safe." "My wallet was here the whole time," Alina admitted, pointing to the kitchen table where her wallet sat beside the salt and pepper shakers. "I must have put it down while I was making my shopping list and forgot to put it in my purse." Richard sighed. "It happens. The important thing is you're home safe." As they finished putting away the groceries, Richard noticed Alina seemed preoccupied. "Penny for your thoughts?" "I wish I'd gotten that young man's address," she said. "I want to repay him and thank him properly. Marcus Johnson was his name. He mentioned he was studying business at the community college." Richard made a mental note of the name. Perhaps they could track him down through the college to properly thank him. It was the least they could do. At his mother's apartment, Marcus found Loretta Johnson resting in her recliner, a heating pad on her swollen hands. At 48, Loretta looked older, her body worn down by years of physical labor and now disease. Her eyes lit up when Marcus entered. "There's my boy," she said warmly. "You didn't need to come all this way." "Of course I did," Marcus replied, bending to kiss her cheek. "I brought your medication and some groceries for you too." Loretta noticed the small bag. "That's not much, Marcus. Are you eating properly?" "Yes, Mom," he assured her, though it wasn't entirely true. "I had to budget a little differently this week, that's all." Something in his tone made Loretta study her son more carefully. "What happened?" Marcus hesitated, then shared the story of Alina Wilkins at the supermarket. "She reminded me of Grandma," he explained. "I couldn't just walk away." Loretta's face softened with pride. "Your grandmother would be proud. I certainly am." Then her expression grew serious. "But Marcus, you can't take care of everyone. You're stretching yourself too thin as it is." I'm fine, Mom, Marcus insisted. Just a few more tight months and I'll have my associate's degree. Then I can apply for better jobs. And then the bachelor's degree, Loretta reminded him. And then maybe graduate school. The ladder keeps extending, son. When will you start living for yourself instead of for me and your dreams? There are dreams, Marcus corrected gently. And I am living for myself. This is what I want. Loretta didn't look convinced, but she let it go. At least take some of the chicken stew I made yesterday. There's plenty, and it sounds like you need it more than I do. Marcus checked his watch. I have to get to Angelo's. My shift starts at 6, but I'll come by tomorrow and get some, I promise. After making sure his mother had everything she needed, Marcus hurried to catch the bus to Angelo's Italian restaurant, where he worked as a delivery driver 4 nights a week. The owner, Angelo Morty, was a gruff but fair employer who appreciated Marcus's reliability. You're cutting it close, Johnson, Angelo commented as Marcus rushed in at 5:58 p.m. Sorry, Mr. Morty, had to drop off medication for my mother. Angelo's expression softened slightly. How is she? Managing, Marcus replied as he put on the red and green Angelo's cap. The new prescription seems to help. Good, good. It's busy tonight, Tuesday 2-for-1 special. The delivery car is gassed up and ready. For the next 4 hours, Marcus drove around town delivering pizzas, pasta, and Angelo's famous garlic knots. The tips were decent. People tended to be generous when they didn't have to leave their homes for dinner, and Marcus mentally allocated each dollar to his various expenses. By the time his shift ended at 10:00 p.m., he was exhausted but satisfied with the night's earnings. Between the hourly wage and tips, he'd made enough to cover the groceries he'd purchased for a leaner Wilkins and still have a small cushion until Friday's paycheck. What Marcus didn't know was that while he was delivering Italian food, Diane Fletcher's video had gone viral. Local news stations had picked it up, and people were asking who the mystery Good Samaritan was. The hashtag Find the Grocery Hero was trending in their region. Sandra Pearson, the Martin's supermarket manager, had been contacted by several news outlets after employees recognized the store in the video. Ethical concerns about privacy kept her from revealing Marcus's name, but she confirmed that the incident had indeed taken place. It was a genuine act of kindness, she told a reporter by phone. The young man didn't want recognition or repayment. He just saw someone in need and helped. By the time Marcus returned to his apartment just after 10:30 p.m., the video had thousands of shares and comments. People were speculating about his identity, praising his generosity, and in some cases, using the incident to make broader social commentaries. Exhausted from his long day, Marcus showered, reviewed his notes for tomorrow's classes, and fell into bed without checking social media. His last thought before sleep claimed him was a mental calculation of whether he could afford to replace his worn-out running shoes next month. The next morning, Marcus awoke to his alarm at 6:30 a.m. as usual. His routine was the same: run, shower, dress, but as he prepared for his day, his phone buzzed repeatedly with text messages. First from his cousin Jamal, "Dude, is this you?" Then from his friend Tasha, "Marcus, you're famous, call me." Confused, Marcus clicked the link Jamal had sent. His eyes widened as he watched Diane Fletcher's video of his interaction with Alina Wilkins. The recording was taken from a distance, slightly grainy, but clearly showed him offering to pay for the elderly woman's groceries. The video had over 1 million views. The comments section was overwhelmingly positive, with people praising the anonymous young hero and sharing stories of similar acts of kindness they'd experienced or witnessed. But there were also uncomfortable comments about race, with some viewers expressing surprise at a young black man helping an elderly white woman. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, stunned. He never sought attention for helping others. It was simply how he'd been raised. Now thousands of strangers were discussing his character, making assumptions about his background, turning a simple act into something extraordinary. His phone rang. It was his mother. "Marcus, are you seeing this?" Loretta's voice was a mixture of pride and concern. "Mrs. Thompson next door showed me the video on her phone. That's you at Martin's, isn't it?" "Yeah, Mom, it's me," Marcus confirmed, still processing. "I don't understand why someone would film that." "Because good news is rare these days," Loretta said. "But baby, be careful. Not all attention is good attention." Marcus understood his mother's warning. As a black man, visibility could be dangerous. What some viewers saw as an inspiring act of kindness, others might twist into something else entirely. "I'll be careful," he promised. "I've got to get to class. Love you, Mom." "Love you too, son. Keep your head up." As Marcus headed for the bus stop, he noticed people looking at him oddly, some smiling, others staring with frank curiosity. Had he been recognized from the video, the thought made him uncomfortable. At the community college, Marcus tried to focus on his morning accounting class, but whispers and pointed glances followed him. During a break, a classmate he barely knew approached him. "Hey, you're the guy from that video, right? The one who paid for the old lady's groceries." Marcus nodded reluctantly. "It wasn't a big deal. Man, you're trending. My sister works at Channel 7 and they want to interview you." "No thanks," Marcus said quickly. "I appreciate it, but I'm not interested in interviews." The classmate looked disappointed but shrugged. "Your call, but you could probably get a GoFundMe out of this, make some serious cash." The suggestion bothered Marcus deeply. He hadn't helped Alina Wilkins for money or recognition. The idea of profiting from the situation felt wrong. Across town, Alina Wilkins was also discovering the viral video. Her neighbor Barbara had sent it to her via email with the subject line, "Isn't this?" Alina watched in astonishment as the scene at Martin's supermarket played out on her computer screen. "Richard," she called, "come look at this." Richard entered the study, coffee cup in hand. "What is it, Ellie?" "It's that young man from yesterday, Marcus. Someone recorded him helping me and now it's all over the internet." Richard watched the video with growing concern. "This is an invasion of privacy. They didn't ask either of you for permission to share this." "No," Alina said, "but isn't it wonderful that people are recognizing his kindness?" Richard wasn't so sure. "It depends on how he feels about it. Not everyone wants to be in the spotlight." Alina's expression became determined. "We need to find him, Richard, not just to repay him now, but to make sure he's all right with all this attention." Meanwhile, at Martin's supermarket, Sandra Pearson was dealing with an unexpected media circus. News vans were parked outside, reporters hoping to catch a glimpse of either Marcus or Alina, or to interview staff who had witnessed the interaction. Sandra had called an emergency staff meeting before opening. "We respect the privacy of our customers," she reminded her employees. "No one is to speak to the media about yesterday's incident or identify the individuals involved." But one checkout employee, Tina, had already accepted $50 from a tabloid reporter for confirming the identities of both Marcus and Alina. By mid-morning, their names were being reported by multiple news outlets. Marcus discovered this during his lunch break when his phone exploded with notifications. Friends, family members, and complete strangers were messaging him on every platform. Local news stations were requesting interviews. Several churches and community organizations wanted him to speak at their events. And more ominously, there were also messages from trolls, some containing racial slurs and accusations that the video was staged or a publicity stunt. Overwhelmed, Marcus turned off his phone. He needed to think to figure out how to handle this unexpected spotlight. He found a quiet corner of the campus library and tried to focus on his textbook, but his mind kept returning to the video and its implications. His afternoon shift at the library provided some respite from the chaos. Mrs. Chen, the head librarian, greeted him with her usual calm smile, giving no indication that she'd seen the video. "The biography section needs reorganizing," she said simply. "Some of the shelves got mixed up during yesterday's school visit." Marcus gratefully immersed himself in the task, finding comfort in the orderly process of arranging books. The library was quiet, a sanctuary from the noise of social media and news cycles. As he worked, Marcus overheard two older patrons discussing the grocery store video in hushed tones. "It restores your faith in the younger generation," one said. "Not all of them are glued to their phones or causing trouble." "Yes, but did you notice it was a young black man helping an elderly white woman?" The other replied, "Doesn't that challenge some stereotypes?" Marcus continued shelving books, his back to the women, uncomfortable with being reduced to a symbol rather than a person who had simply tried to help someone in need. At Martin's supermarket, Alina Wilkins returned, determined to find information about Marcus. She approached the customer service desk, where a different manager was on duty. "I was here yesterday," Alina explained. "A young man named Marcus Johnson helped me when I forgot my wallet. I'd like to contact him to express my thanks." The manager, mindful of company policy on customer privacy, shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't give out personal information about our customers or employees." "But he's not an employee," Alina persisted. "And I'm not asking for his address or phone number. Perhaps you could pass along a thank you note." Before the manager could respond, Sandra Pearson emerged from the back office, recognizing Alina from the previous day. "Mrs. Wilkins, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" In Sandra's office, the manager explained the situation. Your interaction with Mr. Johnson has gone viral on social media. News outlets have identified both of you, and we've been inundated with inquiries. Alina's eyes widened. Is that why there were news vans outside? Sandra nodded grimly. I'm afraid so. We're doing our best to protect everyone's privacy, but the situation has escalated. Oh dear, Alina murmured. I never intended to cause trouble for that kind young man. You didn't, Sandra assured her. The person who recorded and shared the video is responsible, not you. Alina straightened her shoulders, a hint of the determined teacher she'd once been emerging. Then I need to make this right. If they're using my image and his in this way, the least I can do is make sure Marcus knows I'm grateful, not part of this spectacle. Sandra hesitated, then made a decision. I can't give you his contact information, but he mentioned he works at Angelo's Italian restaurant in the evenings. Perhaps you could leave a note for him there. Thank you, Alina said sincerely. I appreciate your help. As Alina left the supermarket, she was approached by a reporter with a microphone and cameraman in tow. Mrs. Wilkins, can you tell us about the young man who helped you yesterday? How did it feel to be on the receiving end of such generosity? Alina froze momentarily, then squared her shoulders. No comment, she said firmly, continuing to her car with as much dignity as she could muster. By late afternoon, Marcus had no choice but to turn his phone back on to coordinate his evening shift at Angelo's. The barrage of notifications was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, thousands of social media alerts. One text from his mother stood out. Channel 7 reporters came to my work looking for you. Be careful, baby. A knot formed in Marcus's stomach. This was going too far. His privacy, his mother's privacy, invaded because of a simple act of kindness. With growing apprehension, Marcus boarded the bus to Angelo's. Several passengers stared at him, whispering to each other. One woman actually took a photo, not even trying to be subtle about it. At Angelo's, Marcus found more reporters waiting outside the restaurant. Angelo himself stood in the doorway, arms crossed, blocking their entrance. No cameras inside, the restaurateur bellowed. This is a place of business, not a circus. When Angelo spotted Marcus approaching, he motioned him to the side alley entrance. Use the back door, kid. These vultures have been here for an hour. Safe in the kitchen, Marcus thanked his boss. I'm sorry about this, Mr. Morty. I had no idea it would turn into such a mess. Angelo waved off the apology. You did a good thing, not your fault some busybody made it public. He passed Marcus the delivery car keys. I've got a stack of orders ready to go. The addresses are all outside the main part of town, so you shouldn't run into more reporters. Grateful for the consideration, Marcus loaded the delivery car with pizzas and headed out through the back alley. The evening deliveries provided a welcome distraction, though several customers recognized him and wanted to talk about the video. One elderly customer, a man in his 80s, gripped Marcus's arm as he delivered a large pepperoni pizza. You remind me of a soldier in my unit in Nam, he said, his eyes distant with memory. Young black kid from Detroit, saved my life during Tet, never got to thank him properly before he was shipped home. Marcus listened respectfully, understanding that the old man was sharing something precious. I'm sure he knew you were grateful, sir. The man pressed a $20 tip into Marcus's hand. What you did for that lady, it matters. Kindness always matters. By the time Marcus finished his deliveries and returned to Angelo's, it was nearly closing time. Angelo was wiping down tables, the last customers having departed. Someone left something for you, Angelo said, pointing to an envelope on the counter. Older lady with white hair said it was important. Marcus opened the envelope to find a handwritten note. Dear Marcus, I was dismayed to discover that our interaction has become public without either of our consent. Please know that I had nothing to do with the video, and I deeply regret any disruption this has caused in your life. I remain profoundly grateful for your kindness. In my day, we didn't have social media to amplify such moments. We simply carried them in our hearts as reminders of humanity's better nature. If you're willing, I would very much like to thank you properly. My brother-in-law, Richard, and I would be honored if you would join us for dinner some evening at your convenience. My contact information is below. With sincere gratitude, Alina Wilkins. Marcus read the note twice, touched by the woman's thoughtfulness and concerned for her privacy as well. He tucked the note carefully into his pocket, resolving to call her tomorrow. As Marcus cleaned the delivery car before heading home, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but he answered anyway, half expecting another reporter. Instead, it was Richard Wilkins. Mr. Johnson. This is Richard Wilkins, Alina's brother-in-law. I hope I'm not disturbing you. No, sir, Marcus replied. I just received Mrs. Wilkins' note. Good, I'm calling because the situation has escalated. A local news station ran a segment identifying both you and Alina by name and showing pictures obtained from social media. We're concerned about your privacy and Alina's safety. Marcus leaned against the car, suddenly tired. I was afraid of something like this. Is Mrs. Wilkins all right? Shaken, Richard admitted. At her age, this kind of attention is unsettling, but she's more worried about you, to be honest. About me? Why? Richard hesitated. Some of the comments online have taken an ugly turn, racial elements, conspiracy theories. It's ridiculous but potentially harmful to you. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. His mother's warning echoed in his mind. Not all attention is good attention. What can I do? He asked. Alina and I think it might help if we address this together, Richard suggested. A joint statement to the press, setting the record straight, asking for privacy, nothing elaborate, just enough to diffuse the situation. Marcus considered the idea. He had wanted to stay completely out of the spotlight, but perhaps that was no longer an option. When and where? Tomorrow morning, our home. We could invite one reporter from the local paper, Barbara Chen. She's reputable and won't sensationalize the story. I have classes in the morning, Marcus said, but I could come by around noon during my lunch break. Perfect, Richard replied, relief evident in his voice. And Marcus, thank you again for helping Alina. Regardless of what's happened since, that moment of kindness was real and important. After ending the call, Marcus finished cleaning the car and said goodnight to Angelo. The bus ride home was mercifully uneventful, though he noticed more stairs than usual. In his apartment, Marcus finally allowed himself to fully process the day's events. What should have been a simple, private interaction had spiraled beyond his control. Tomorrow's meeting with the Wilkinses and a reporter might help contain the situation, but the privacy he valued had already been compromised. He checked his bank account balance, still precariously low despite the night's tips, and thought about all the obligations awaiting him tomorrow. Classes, work at the library, his evening shift at Angelo's, checking on his mother, studying for Friday's economics quiz. And now, a meeting with the Wilkinses and a reporter. Marcus set his alarm for 6:30 a.m. and tried to sleep, but rest eluded him as his mind cycled through worries and contingencies. When he finally drifted off near midnight, his dreams were troubled by faceless crowds with cameras, all pointed at him. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Marcus's mood. He skipped his usual run, needing the extra sleep more than exercise. As he dressed for the day, he chose his nicest button-down shirt and khakis, the outfit he reserved for class presentations and job interviews. His phone continued to buzz with notifications, which he largely ignored except for messages from his mother and close friends. One text from his cousin Jamal caught his attention. Heads up, some trolls doxed you online. Address and everything. Might want to stay with Mom for a few days. A chill ran through Marcus. Doxing, the publication of private information online, could have serious consequences. He made a mental note to speak with his apartment building manager about security. The morning's classes passed in a blur of distraction. Even Professor Whitman's engaging lecture on market economics failed to hold Marcus's full attention. As noon approached, he caught the bus to the address Richard Wilkins had provided, a modest but well-maintained home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Alina answered the door herself, her face lighting up with genuine warmth. Marcus, thank you for coming. Please come in out of the rain. The house was cozy and filled with mementos of a long life, photographs, books, knickknacks from travels. Richard Wilkins greeted Marcus with a firm handshake, his expression a mixture of gratitude and concern. The reporter will be here at 12:30, Richard explained. I thought we should have a few minutes to talk privately first. Over cups of tea in the living room, Alina expressed her distress about the viral video. In all my years of teaching, I learned that good deeds are their own reward. They shouldn't be performed for an audience. Exactly, Marcus agreed. I wasn't trying to be a hero or make a statement. You reminded me of my grandmother, and I just wanted to help. Richard nodded thoughtfully. The narrative has gotten away from both of you. People are projecting their own meanings onto what was simply human decency. The doorbell rang. Barbara Chen from the local newspaper had arrived early. A petite woman in her 40s with an intelligent gaze, Barbara had been covering community news for over 15 years. Thank you all for agreeing to speak with me, she said after introductions. I understand you'd like to set the record straight about the supermarket video. We would, Richard confirmed. Both Marcus and Alina have had their privacy violated, and we'd like to address that. Barbara took out a recorder. May I? When they nodded, she placed it on the coffee table. Let's start with the basics. Could you describe what actually happened at Martin's supermarket? Alina recounted the incident, forgetting her wallet, her distress, and Marcus's unexpected kindness. Marcus then explained his perspective, emphasizing that he'd simply wanted to help someone in need. "So this wasn't some staged event or social experiment?" Barbara asked. "Absolutely not," Marcus said firmly. "I didn't even know I was being recorded until the video went viral." Barbara made notes. "And how has the attention affected each of you?" Alina described her discomfort with the unexpected publicity. "At my age, privacy becomes precious. I've had strangers calling and coming to the door." When it was Marcus's turn, he hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. "It's been overwhelming. Reporters at my jobs, my school, even approaching my mother at her workplace. My cousin told me this morning that my personal information has been posted online without my consent." Barbara looked up sharply. "You've been doxxed. That's serious." "Yes," Marcus acknowledged, "and some of the comments have taken on racial overtones that make me uncomfortable. What was a simple human interaction has been turned into some kind of statement about race relations." "Which it wasn't," Alina interjected firmly. "It was one person helping another." The color of Marcus's skin had nothing to do with his kindness. Barbara nodded, continuing to take notes. "What would you like people to know or do now?" Marcus and Alina exchanged glances. "We'd like our privacy respected," Marcus said, "and for people to understand that kindness shouldn't be exceptional or newsworthy. It should be normal." "And perhaps," Alina added, "if people are moved by what they saw, they could perform their own acts of kindness rather than focusing on ours." The interview continued for another 20 minutes, with Barbara asking thoughtful questions that allowed both Marcus and Alina to express their feelings about the situation. When she finally turned off her recorder, she looked at them seriously. "This will run in tomorrow's paper. I'll focus on the privacy concerns and your request for the attention to die down. I can't promise it will immediately stop the interest, but it might help." "That's all we can ask," Richard said, showing her to the door. When Richard returned to the living room, he found Alina and Marcus deep in conversation. "My husband Harold was a high school history teacher," Alina was saying. "He always believed education was the great equalizer. He would have been impressed by your dedication to your studies despite the challenges." Marcus smiled. "My mother says something similar. She never got to finish college herself, but she made sure I understood the value of education." "Richard tells me you're hoping to transfer to State University next year?" Alina asked. "If I can get a scholarship," Marcus confirmed. "The business program there is excellent." Alina and Richard exchanged a look that Marcus couldn't quite interpret. Then Alina reached for a photo album on the coffee table. "Before you go, I'd like to show you something," she said, opening to a page with a photograph of a young couple from what appeared to be the 1970s. "That's Harold and me on our wedding day, 1975, Alina explained. "And this," she turned the page to a photo of a group of people marching with signs, "is Harold at the university protest against the Vietnam War in '69. He always stood up for what he believed in." Marcus studied the photos with interest, noticing that in the protest photo, Harold Wilkins, a tall white man with glasses, was marching alongside black and white students alike. For the time, it would have been a bold statement. "He sounds like he was a remarkable man," Marcus said. "He was," Alina agreed, a hint of sadness in her smile. "And he established a scholarship fund before he passed away for promising students who demonstrate character and community commitment." Marcus looked up, surprised. "We're on the selection committee," Richard explained. "The deadline for applications is next month. You should consider applying." I don't know what to say," Marcus stammered, overwhelmed by the unexpected opportunity. "Say you'll apply," Alina encouraged. "This isn't about the supermarket. Harold's scholarship exists to help students exactly like you, dedicated, hardworking, and kind." Marcus checked his watch reluctantly. "I have to get to my shift at the library, but yes, I'll definitely apply. Thank you so much for telling me about this." As Marcus prepared to leave, Richard handed him a business card. "If you have any concerns about the doxing situation or receive any threats, call me immediately. I have a friend who's a lawyer specializing in privacy issues. And don't forget about dinner," Alina added. "The invitation still stands, perhaps this weekend." "I'd like that," Marcus said sincerely. "Thank you both for understanding and for trying to help contain this situation." As Marcus walked to the bus stop, the rain had stopped and patches of blue sky were visible between the clouds. Despite the stress and unwanted attention of the past 24 hours, he felt a glimmer of hope. The scholarship Richard and Alina had mentioned could make a significant difference in his educational journey. More importantly, what had begun as a simple act of kindness had connected him with people who seemed genuinely interested in his well-being and success. In an unexpected way, his grandmother's wisdom had proven true. What goes around comes around. The supermarket incident faded from public attention over the following weeks, as new viral videos and controversies took its place. Barbara Chen's article had helped, presenting the human side of the story and appealing to readers' better nature to respect Marcus and Alina's privacy. There were lasting effects, however. Marcus applied for Harold Wilkins Scholarship, and based on his academic record and character references, was selected as one of 5 recipients. The award would cover a significant portion of his tuition at State University, making the transfer he'd dreamed of financially feasible. Alina, with Richard's support, became more open about her struggles with early-stage dementia. Rather than hiding her condition, she began volunteering with a local Alzheimer's awareness group, sharing her experience to help others facing similar challenges. And perhaps most significantly, a friendship developed between Marcus and the Wilkinses. Sunday dinners became a regular occurrence, with Marcus occasionally bringing his mother when her health permitted. These meetings bridged generations and backgrounds, creating connections that might never have formed without that chance encounter at Martin's supermarket. 6 months after the incident, Marcus was helping Alina tend her garden when she mentioned something that had been on her mind. "You know, that day in the supermarket, I was so embarrassed and confused. I thought everyone was judging me for being old and forgetful," she confessed, pruning shears in her gloved hands. "When you stepped forward to help, it wasn't just about the money. It was about being seen as a person, not a problem." Marcus nodded, understanding completely. "Sometimes that's all any of us want, to be seen for who we are, not what others assume about us." Alina smiled at the young man who had become like family. "Well, I saw you, Marcus Johnson. And I'm grateful every day for that." As they continued working side by side in the garden, the viral video that had briefly united them in unwanted fame seemed distant and unimportant. What remained was something more valuable and enduring, a connection between people who might otherwise have remained strangers, brought together by one simple act of kindness that, whether seen or unseen, had changed their lives forever. If you're enjoying this story, please consider subscribing to hear more stories like this. Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.